candidates for the upcoming, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, this fall's federal election. Today's guest is Maverick Party of the Western Maverick Party, Douglas Karwandy. Doug, thank you so much for doing this. He is the candidate for Battle River Crowfoot. Thank you so much for doing this. Greatly appreciate it, Doug.
Thanks, Chris. Great to be here.
My first question, as always, is where's your sense of duty to serve come from?
Well, that sense of duty, I think, comes from my father. My father was a World War II veteran. Spent most of his career in the RCF. 2 years in World War II. Joined in 1943, and then I think he retired right over 1966, 65. Shortly after I was born, actually. And then he started a business. He's always was interested in politics. He had friends like Tommy License out of Vermilion for our MLA back in the day, and Don Mazankowski was our MP at the time. So these are all the guys that I kind of grew up with. That's sort of where that all started out. And he was pretty active in politics.
Now, before we jump into the Maverick Party, I want to talk about yourself a little bit more here. For the people who are just tuning in and who are listening and who want to know a little bit more about you, what is your story? Why are you the person to put your name forward for the Maverick Party of Canada and to be the next MP for the riding of Battle River Crowfoot?
Well, firstly, I don't really consider myself to be a politician. That isn't a moniker I would attach to myself in any way, shape, or form. Other than that's sort of the business that I'm leading myself into. But that's kind of where I start. Is I'm sort of Joe Average. I've had a bunch of different jobs that took me through the oil patch, through retail, through my own business operations. Small business type stuff. Nothing very corporate or big. So I kind of think of myself as sort of Joe Average. I've got experience in oil patch. I've got experience in agriculture. I've got experience in transportation. All sort of things that make Alberta work. I've got a good idea as to how it all functions and fits together. I've got a family of four, wife, kids, two dogs, bills to pay, all that kind of stuff. This is nothing about my life is much different than anybody else's. But my drive really comes from seeing that 2019 election, and that was a trigger for me. I spent my whole life just sort of voting conservative here or reform there or wherever the party du jour for the area was. But 2019 really hit hard for me. This is when you look at the map after the election was done, and one entire half of the country was solid Tory blue, and then the other half of the country went liberal. Even after all the scandals and issues that we'd had in government, it just seems like we saw things happening out here differently than what people in central and eastern Canada saw. And I didn't quite understand where that was coming from. I understand, that's where the power base is. That's where all the decisions are made, is up in central Canada. So we out here in the west, we get the raw end of the deal way too often, and that's what pushed me into this. I got sick and tired of seeing that happen. We went through the beginning of the pandemic when all people were shut in. That's kind of when this party got started rolling. It was in the middle of the pandemic. Not a bad time to get people started and interested in stuff when everybody's really upset and angry already. So that's what pushed me over the edge there.
So let's talk about the Maverick Party. In your own words, describe to me what the Maverick Party is, because you can ask anyone in politics today, and they'll give a different explanation on what their party is and what their party represents. So, in your own words, what does the Maverick Party represent, and what is it for those who are potentially looking at the Maverick Party to say, hey, I might put my vote and my trust into that party?
Right. Yeah. Well, see, first off, the biggest misconception that we have nowadays with the Maverick Party is that people think that we're a provincial party. We are not a provincial party. We're here as a federal party to go to Ottawa. Our job is basically to support the provinces in the future for if they happen to decide that they want to have a referendum for separation. The Maverick Party is there in order to be in Ottawa to further that cause. Somebody has to be in Ottawa that's going to be a champion of that issue. Right now, we haven't got anybody that's going to do that. The Conservatives, the small, I call them small C Conservatives, they are no longer Conservatives as far as I see. They've morphed into a small L Liberal Party, touting the same policies that the Liberals are pushing. Everything that they seem just seems to be not really designed for a fair and equal representation for Westerners. That's where we get lost in the mix. All the decisions are made out east. The decisions that make out west are literally can be ignored, and have to be ignored really because the Conservative Party is tied to their party politics. That's how the Conservative Party works. If you are not toeing the party line, if you don't vote the party way, then you're tossed out of the caucus. They've shown that ad infinitum for the Liberals and the Conservatives. If you don't pull the same weight, then you're out the door. Suddenly you're an independent, and then you have no issue. You're no recourse back into politics. So Maverick Party isn't like that. Maverick Party doesn't have that policy. If we come to a vote in the House of Commons, if we don't think that this is going to be for our constituents, it doesn't get my vote. We're 100% Western focused. Anything else that happens out east, well, that's really their own major concern. We're not here to form government. We're here to back up the provinces as far as Western interests. Maverick Party's got sort of a two-track mission. One is change through constitutional reform, and the other one is the separation track. That gives us sort of a two-prong attack to try and gain interest in seats in Parliament. Lots of people aren't interested in separatism.
And I want to talk about that because on the Maverick Party website, the Maverick's mission statement, and it's literally clearly stated on the website, is to achieve greater fairness and self-determination for Western Canadians through A, constitutional change, or B, the creation of an independent nation. I'm going to start off with this question, and then we'll dive a little bit more deeper into those two areas.
Absolutely.
Which one would you prefer to see?
Well, really, they both are equal in weight. They both have to happen at the same time. They aren't this, then this. There is a constant push for both of them to happen at the same time. Obviously, the first issues when you get into government or into a seat in Parliament is that you're there to represent your people. Okay, so that's your primary responsibility. In order for the first action of the mission statements, the constitutional changes, and we have a number of them that you can find on the website there that will lead out all the changes that we want to try and lead to. But the first is to try and change it so that it makes it more fair, give us true representation for the West, a little more basically freedom for us to make decisions in our own province that are with respect to interprovincial trade, with respect to the transfer payments, with respect to the justice system. All of these are issues that need to get addressed, and without a true voice that isn't being quashed or held back by Central Canadian and Eastern Canadian ideals, policies, that's where we come in. Now, the other aspect is the separation, and it has to happen at the same time as an equal weight. It is there for us to be used. It's kind of like the hammer that you carry over your shoulder when you walk into a fight, right? It says you want to have something that you can have. It's basically what Quebec did as well. If you look at back into the history here a little bit, when Quebec was seeking separation, they had, this is all prior to the Bloc even. The Bloc was morphed into the whole idea afterwards. But the initial aspect was just they had the idea for separation. That was their hammer. They got the Bloc Québécois in. Now they have a few extra seats. What, 30? How many seats do they have? 30?
36 or something?
32 seats.
Yeah.
altogether. And they're only running in Quebec. So their focus is Quebec. They've been very successful at this. They don't have any interest in voting for policies that have anything to do with Western Canada, as nor would we as Maverick Party have any interest in delving into the politics of Quebec. So they get an equal weighting. The twin track is one is this constant change through reforms, which is basically what the Reform Party was after with the equal Senate, the Triple E Senate, and the interprovincial trade. All these ideas aren't new. These are all things that we've been floating around for years. But the new change to the whole process is that we're trying to go after the Western region as a block. All four provinces, all three territories, if possible. The three territories, I don't want to leave them out of the whole deal. They've each got one potential seat up there as well. We've got 104 seats in all of the Western provinces. I'm not suggesting that this year we're going to get 104 seats. That's not even on the board. We've got, I think, 16 candidates now, 17 candidates, 16 candidates. We're filling up ridings that have large portions of conservative voters. We're not interested in letting Liberals or the NDPs get into any more seats in Western Canada, because they've already got too many as it is.
We have a lot to
With
dive
the
into from what you just said there, because I find it fascinating that as an upstart party, you have attracted. The Maverick Party has attracted so many people, and it seems to be resonating with a lot of Western voters right now. And you talked about it briefly about in 2019, you became disillusioned, and that's what made you transition into the Maverick Party. I want to ask, what are you hearing from your neighbors, from your friends? Are they on the same track set as well, saying, you know what, we have been getting an unfair deal from the Conservatives and the Liberals, and it's time to change. It's time to move and stop doing the reoccurring, we'll vote Conservative every single time, to hopefully, potentially see a good scenario for Western Canada, and finally say enough is enough. We're going to go with this new party. We're going to go with the Maverick Party, because they are, on their website says, they're going to stand up for us, and that's what we need right now in today's world.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm hearing very similar things from the constituents. I've been out on the road, going door to door, farm to farm, visiting ranchers, visiting farms. The rural community they're being hurt hard. Their input costs are going through the roof. Everything is costing them much, much more. And the carbon tax is probably one of the biggest issues that's on the plate. Everybody across the province is still pushing for carbon tax. We are exactly the opposite of that approach. We do not want any way, shape, or form to do with any carbon tax or carbon tax scheme, rollbacks, credits, debits, anything that has to do with that nonsense is not on the table. That's the first thing, and the constituents are in agreement with that. They're pushed over the edge with that. Secondly, the other
Let's
issue.
just jump on that for a second, because after Erin O'Toole, the leader of the Conservative Party, came out with his carbon tax, whatever you want to call it, or carbon debit, or however he wants to spin it, a carbon tax is a carbon tax, and a carbon tax is a carbon tax, no matter how you say it.
Yeah.
Did you hear from more conservatives say, you know what, enough's enough? We were going conservative because there was no carbon tax, but now he's done a complete flip flop, and we're moving on from him.
I'll be quite honest. The Conservatives have been our biggest supplier of supporters, or the Conservative Party has been our biggest supplier of supporters. Every time they open their mouth and say something that has to benefit the Central Canada and Eastern Canada, our numbers go up every single time. It's happened every time that he opens his mouth. We get more voters. We went from a polling of about 3 or 4% to 10.5% in the span of 1 week after he started speaking. It's continued that trend. We're now at roughly 11.5% for last week, and new numbers out for next week. Well, I'm predicting that we're going to see another pop of several percent. So I'm excited every time they open their mouth because they got nothing good to say for Westerners. I'll tell you, and everybody sees it. They've lost their base out here, and then it's visual.
How do as the next MP for Battle River Crowfoot, you will have to represent everyone in your riding, even those who don't support you. And let's be
Absolutely.
honest,
Yeah.
politics has become a very divided world. How do you envision yourself working with all constituents, even those who may not agree with you on certain issues, whether it be the equalization payment, whether it be the energy, whether it be environment? How do you envision yourself working with everyone to ensure that you're representing your constituents? Because sometimes what I hear from people is once you elect a politician, they go off to Ottawa and you never hear from them again. So how
Right.
do you envision changing that atmosphere, but also representing everyone?
See, the biggest problem that comes up with that whole representation idea is that when you go to Ottawa, that suddenly you disappear and your priorities change. And I've seen that myself. I says, I'm not a spring chicken. I says, I've seen it happen when people go to Ottawa and then that disappears. Fortunately, a lot of the guys that I've dealt with in my career, Leon Benoit, he was one of the guys that was one of my mentors when I was
I
younger,
know Leon
and
quite well. I've interviewed him a few times.
yeah, he's a great man. He's absolute salt of the earth, and what he tells you is what he does. And he there's no waffling, there's no backtracking, there's no oh I forgot or I meant to or I didn't. When Leon stuck up for us, I mean he's the one that helped my wife get immigrated into Canada. I was having a horrible time with the government trying to get my wife over from the Philippines, so she got stuck on a visa issue. And it took me a year and a half to get her, my daughter, out of the country and back to Canada. So my daughter was a year and a half before I ever met her. And it was because of Leon Benoit and his staff that they got me through that whole ordeal and got my family reunited here in Canada. So he's a good friend of mine. He's done me solids the entire way through my life, and that's the way I sort of intend on running myself as well. Uh, if you give people a straight shots, and every time he says you're going to get good results. And second, and people smell BS. They know when they're not being truthful. They know when you're not telling them what they need to hear. So uh, I know people don't have necessarily all the same opinions that I have, and I'm okay with that too. He says I don't expect everybody to be as pro gun as I am. I don't expect everybody to be into what I'm trying to do. There's lots of people, and I see it on Facebook and Twitter all the time. There's plenty of trolls out there that are trying to slam us and paint us with all kinds of brushes that we aren't. We're not alt right. I would consider myself to be a true conservative, sort of center right is where I kind of place myself. I don't consider myself to be anything extremist of any way, shape, or form. Uh, that's kind of where I sit.
One of the big misconceptions that I hear when I talk to people here in Calgary and across Canada is if there's upstart parties like the Maverick Party or the People's Party of Canada, which we won't talk about, we'll just keep to the Maverick Party, you'll split the votes and the Liberals will constantly get in. You will
Yeah.
split the vote and the Liberals will be able to squeeze up the middle and win by 1,000 votes, win by 100 votes. Are you afraid that with you potentially running, you could potentially elect a liberal in Battle River Crowfoot? Never going to happen, but there's a possibility as pigs fly,
It
so
would
to
be more
speak.
NDP. I'll get you. I would guarantee NDP would probably get a seat before for any Liberal ever did. No, I think that whole vote splitting thing is an absolute myth. It's something that I think it would be more predominant in our provincial politics. But the actual vote splitting, as far as federal politics go, I think it's a complete myth. It's a non-starter. It's what people use in order to try and get other people scared. That's what I think that it's a fear tool, right? It's if this happens, then this is going to happen, and you don't want this to happen. But that's not the way it works. We're smarter than that. We kind of picked a bunch of ridings that we were going to be running in initially that have zero chance for a Liberal Party member to get past the post office. It's statistically impossible. For example, in my riding by Battle River, here's some of the numbers. 85% of the voting population in Battle River voted for Conservative in the last election for Damien Court. Okay? Now, the smallest number after that for the next possible party that could have got in was 10% or 5%. It's just, you've got such a huge gap between 85 and I'll give them the benefit. Maybe they had 15%.
Being generous there, Doug.
Yeah, I'm being very generous because that's kind of the numbers that I'm sitting at now. So, but there's absolutely, even if we split 85, he says we're coming in at about 43%, 42% for where that vote split's going to be. He says I'm planning on taking votes from Damien. Absolutely. He says there's no way to win without taking votes away from Conservatives. I'm totally okay with that. Me being a Conservative, if a vote were to come down in the House of Commons and there was a minority government formed by the Conservatives, I would be voting not lockstep with them. If it doesn't affect the West, then I'll vote as a Conservative would vote. But if it comes to the West, I'm going to vote entirely for what my Western constituents need. That's the difference there.
Just to follow up on that, have you seen a vote that your current MP has made that has not represented the West?
I haven't really gone through all his voting record to see exactly where he's gone in line. He says, I'm sure that there have been votes. Matter of fact, I know that there have been votes that Damien has done that have been for the West because they put forward votes. But did they pass, House of Commons because they don't have the support from the Liberals? There were a couple of bills that were sort of equal on par, that were nonpartisan, that everybody voted equally and all said yay. So it's not like Damien's a bad guy. He says I'm not pounding any of the Conservative candidates. If Damien and I were in the same room, he says we would probably share the same kind of interests and beliefs. But the issue comes in that as a Conservative Party member, he is locked into those votes that come as a Conservative. If Erin O'Toole says we're voting this way, and for the best interests of the Western constituents, he can't vote. He has to vote with the party. He doesn't have that freedom. So that's our entire focus, is with that freedom.
How do you keep a caucus together though with that mentality? And I'm asking that question just off the top of my head because it's great to hear that you'll be voting for your constituents. I understand that, but it goes back to this the question I asked prior is sometimes your constituents might disagree with you. They might not completely agree with you. So talk to me about how you vote your conscience while representing everyone, because yet again, not everyone's going to vote for you. That 15% who is going to vote for the Green Party, the Liberal Party, the NDP, the Rhinoceros Party, they're going to be in your constituents as well.
Oh, absolutely. Well, see, the basic rule of democracy is you've got a majority rules with respect for the minority rights and respect for the minorities. That's how democracy works. You can't just sort of trample over the minority rights. I mean, take Pakistan, for example. Pakistan is a nation that is a democratic nation, but in their democracy, if you are a minority, you do not have the rights. Period. You're a minority. You don't get the same respect and rights that you, and they're trampled on. So the Christian community in Pakistan is being assaulted. Other churches are being taken by the government, and there's nothing that the people can do about it because they don't have the respect for the individual or the personal rights of minorities. I have those rights. I have those respect. If somebody disagrees with me, I can certainly explain my point of view to them. But as far as trying to change their mind, it's not my position to be trying to change everybody's mind. It's more about consensus. If the consensus of the group or the membership says this is what we want, then I would support that. If it comes down to a vote of conscience, that's a different sort of an issue. Moral issues, but that's a different story than just sort of voting for what your constituents need. If the vast majority of the constituents say, Doug, this is maybe coming from a town hall that's in the future that determines this, and we've got the party convention coming up on August the 7th, where these will all be discussed as well. So policy at this point is still being developed, and that comes from the memberships. People in our have to, if you want a voice in the party and to affect the policies that we're projecting, August 7th is your time to do it, because that's where we're going to sit down in a virtual convention. We're going to talk about all our policies. We're going to set them to stone, and that is what we're going to be set. And again, that's the party policies. If it comes to a vote in confidence on, a moral issue, whether it be abortion or something, one of the hot button topics like that, those are all different kinds of topics that would have to be addressed, and that comes down to your personal vote or in your conscience. That's sort of the big difference there. That's where I would draw the line.
Yeah, I want to talk about some of those policies because that's why you're here, and I love talking policy. It's one of my biggest fun things to do on a Tuesday morning at 9:30. It's policy. I want to start with the big elephant in the room: equalization. Your party is in favor of scrapping the equalization payments and keeping the money that is made in the West in the West.
Correct.
Let's be honest, and I think you and I will both agree on this. As much as you want to change it, you need a majority of the people of the majority of the member of parliaments to vote for it. And Let's be honest, Quebec and Ontario will not be voting for that.
Yeah,
so how
right.
do you see yourself changing the equalization formula, changing the attitudes of all Canadians while trying to promote the Western independence, but not Western independence as in separation, but the Western, we need to continue to keep the money here.
Right. Well, you're right. That's probably the biggest elephant in the room. Is you're asking how do you achieve separation? Basically, that's kind of what that comes down to. Because you're right. If you follow the traditional path to separation, followed through because there is a path laid out through the Constitution for that referendum for the provinces. That's the first step. The provinces have to say, this is something that we want. This is something that we need. And they have to give a big enough mandate for the province to make those changes through that referendum. 51% is nice. 95 or 100% would be even better. That's the democracy part of it. So, but technically 51% in order to get it past the post. So once you get 51%, then that would go to the House of Commons for another brouhaha. Right? All the MPs have to sit down and they have to go for it. Just say it makes it past that. Because now it's got to go to the provinces for them to say yay or nay. Right? So there's a lot of roadblocks that can trip up the whole process. And if you wanted to put a probability or percentage of success onto it, it's going to be a pretty small number, right? I mean, everybody gets that, but there are more than one way to skin a cat, as I've most recently discovered. The biggest grin that. Well, the biggest grin that came to my face here recently was when Quebec unilaterally decided that they were going to call themselves a nation. Right? To me, that just opened the door. If you're going to open a door that says a province can unilaterally say that they are an independent nation, that changes the whole storyline to me. And really, all that needed was the support of the Prime Minister and some members of Parliament to make that go all squirrely and true. So I see a different path that it was just opened up recently. And I think that's the path that would be most likely to have any sort of traction to it. It's a novel idea, and the fact that they even proceeded with it was, I think, a huge mistake on their part. But it's certainly going to give us new opportunities for the Western ideal. But in if you even take separation off the page entirely, say separation isn't going to happen. The other aspect that is more interesting, I think, is the idea of autonomy, separation within Canada, because you've got separation without, which would be like a unilateral declaration of independence. You drop the UDI, and then like what Barcelona tried to do there a couple of years ago. That didn't go very well for Barcelona. They ended up having I don't know if he's still in prison, but he's either exiled or in prison. I haven't been following the story, but it didn't go well. Right? So that's the unilateral declaration of independence when you drop the big one. The other way is separation within Canada, and that's more with what Quebec is trying to do. They've mirrored all their social programs. They've mirrored all their federal programs. So they're essentially they are already. It's just a matter of definitions and splitting hairs.
Um, for those who are just tuning in and who are listening, this is the Ballot Box, and we are with Douglas Karwandy, the candidate for the Maverick Party in Battle River Crowfoot. We are just talking policy, and for God bless this show, because I love chatting and seeing where this show goes, and we're talking about Barcelona there for a few seconds. So if you're wondering, that's what happened. We were just talking about Barcelona and their leader. So we will be talking about energy. The energy industry has been taking hit after hit after hit with this government. The Trudeau government seems to be putting up roadblocks, with Bill 69 being one of them, No More Pipelines bill, but also its stance and its wavering on potentially Energy East, Northern Gateway, Keystone XL, which has got vetoed. How do you envision a strong energy sector in Western Canada when you have parties and governments in Quebec, in Ottawa, and in lower mainland BC who are so strongly opposed to it because they believe that the energy industry is dead? And I'm quoting them, and I'm not believing them.
Oh, I know.
The energy industry is coming back.
Yeah, that's their words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do
Yeah,
you envision a strong energy industry and an energy sector in Western Canada when we have so many roadblocks ahead of us that need to be overcome, and provinces and governments do not want to take them down?
well, there's reasons that the provinces don't want to take them down, and that all comes down to the amount of money that the federal government is throwing at it. And that's where a lot of that is coming from. If it wasn't so palatable to swallow this kind of garbage, you throw a bunch of sugar at a bunch of garbage, and it tastes a lot better. So that's what the federal government is doing. So they're throwing a bunch of sugar at all these energy companies, paying them off with these carbon credits. And one of the biggest growth industries right now is carbon credit assessors. A new industry where they will literally trade from one company to another company in the energy sector, hundreds of millions of dollars. They're being paid not to produce oil. They're being paid not to produce gas. They're cutting the taps themselves because they're getting paid more money to not do it. So that's one of the big things that has to be issued, or it has to be addressed, and that's within our own provinces. That's within our own energy sector. Our own energy sector is accepting this kind of tainted money. It's poisoning themselves and it's ruining their own industry. Uh, I'm a big capitalist. I've always been pro business. If you have a product that's decent and people need, they're going to buy it. We have especially in northern Canada, we can't run off of electrical devices. We can't run off of solar panels. We can't run off of energy off the windmills. There isn't enough juice that's produced that will run a semi-tractor trailer from British Columbia to Manitoba. There isn't enough electricity that's going to do that in a timely fashion. The whole trailer would be full of batteries. We're not at that point, and I don't think that we're going to be at that point for 100 years. My kids aren't going to see it, but they're pushing for it. They're trying to get more of this faux fear put into everybody to try and get us to quit. using it. The carbon tax is nothing but a punitive tax to try and get us to stop using it. That's what it was put in there for. And then they're just reaping the extra millions and millions and millions of dollars they're taking from us as general revenue taxes. There's no logic to it. In Western Canada, we need heat and that comes from gas. We need fuel to get our vehicles across. I would be fearful to try and drive a Tesla from Vancouver to Toronto. I would have no issues getting in a car and doing the same thing. We're not at the point where you can heat your car or heat your house or drive your car with electricity. We're not there, and our government just seems to want to try and penalize us for all of these steps to try and use this stuff. I think business will make it come back. I think the demand for a product will force its use. I don't think you can twist that around the other way and try and force people into something that they can't use. I don't think that's possible. I think eventually it will come to the point where people will just say, you know what, I'm filling up my gas with my car, and I'm going. If it's going to cost me $2 a gallon or $2 a liter, rather, he says I'm going to pay it, but he says I'm going to keep using it.
One of the big areas that I want to talk about, because if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, it is actually part of Battle River Crowfoot, but I want to talk about Hard City, Alberta, the beginning of the the Keystone XL pipeline that was going to take Alberta oil from here in Alberta all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. Uh, President Joe Biden has vetoed that. He has canceled that. Are you hearing from the people of that community, and what are they saying right now? Because they were relying on this pipeline to go through because it would mean jobs, it would mean a boom to their economy. And what are you hearing from them?
Well, the pipeline was practically done by the time that it had already crossed over the border underneath the U.S. Canada border and was headed north at that point when Biden pulled the plug on it. So and Trudeau didn't say boo about it. He didn't push back. There was no effort from any of the federal parties to say that this shouldn't happen. There was no outrage. The people were quite upset about it. There was a lot of jobs that got lost of it, and the potential revenue that we could have had by exporting our oil through that pipeline would have been billions. So, yeah, I don't know how you could possibly discount something like that. And it's not as though they're going to pull it out of the ground tomorrow. It's still there. Do I think that another administration could happen in the United States and open that back up again? Absolutely. It's not like it's going to disappear. It's still there. It's just going to wait for us.
The next area I want to talk about is an area that you just spoke about briefly earlier on in the episode was firearms. This government has been sneakily trying to introduce a firearm registry again, or a buyback program for firearms across Canada, where any good citizen can return their firearms and get a payment from the federal government. First off, what is your approach when it comes to firearm safety, and how do you envision the Maverick Party being a strong supporter of safe firearm use?
Well, I'm pro guns. I'm also pro gun education. I think that it's most important if you're going to have. I mean, it's kind of like getting a license for a car, right? This is nobody just sort of gets in a car and starts blazing down the highway to 120. This is bad things happen. Every single time, bad things happen. The same thing with firearms. Firearms is it's a tool. They're great for sport. I love to go and target shoot. I'm not a big hunter. I used to do that when I was younger. I haven't had a whole lot of opportunities to go out and do a lot of plinking on stuff like that. But I love target shooting. I can go to the range any given day and have a wonderful afternoon. It's great therapy. It really is. Now that comes from being educated. That comes from being educated in guns. If you're afraid of guns, don't use guns. You will have a bad opportunity. Get training. There's lots of hunter training courses that you can get your license from. And that's the only way to do it. Is you do it legal, you learn how to do it properly, and you get comfortable with it. It's the same as driving a car, and the same sort of responsibilities go with that. Is no guns don't kill people, people kill people, right? That's how that old moniker used to go. I think we seem to
One
have
of the big,
forgotten that.
yeah, I agree wholeheartedly on that. One of the big things that I've been hearing over the last, I would say, 4 months, because it seems like we're always in a election speculation with a majority
Yeah.
government.
Isn't
Is
that just funny? I have my own opinions on how that works, but
I just want them to pull the plug and just get this election over with. It seems like we're just constantly in a state of, okay, are we or are we not? And it seems like every federal
well,
party
see,
seems to
I
want to
think
campaign on the taxpayer dollar right now. Go ahead.
yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes, exactly. That is exactly what is happening right now. I wish we had the deep pockets that the conservatives and the liberals and the NDP had. I'm looking for a an official agent for my campaign. I think I may have settled on one now, but every candidate has to have an official agent. And I went on to Indeed and I did a quick search through Indeed, and they're paying that role pays about $55,000 a year. And when you don't have a whole lot of funds in your bank account for trying to run a campaign, it says $55,000. That's a lot of money for a campaign to be paying for an official agent. So I'm looking more for a volunteer, really. If anybody out there happens to know one, but politics is not an inexpensive game, and people always give me a hard time. You're always asking me for money. You're always asking me for money. Well, like that's because we're new and we're growing, and we got a lot to do and a lot to accomplish, and nothing comes cheap or free.
Well, and that's what I want to talk about, because I'm just looking at the time and I'm being cautious of it, because I said
Yeah, we're gonna go 42 minutes here.
yeah, but I want to talk about that. Um, People are going to be looking at parties. How can people get involved in your campaign in Battle River Crowfoot? Because you will need volunteers. You will
Oh
need
yes,
people to go out door knocking with you. How can people get involved in your campaign?
got lots of ways to get in touch with us. The for the main part, if for people who are watching this aren't in the Battle River area and aren't in my riding and still want to get a hold of somebody, this is you go to our main website there, maverickparty.ca. That will take you to our main webpage there, and there's a button there that says volunteers and join. So that would be to get you on the list of our main list of volunteers. If you're within the riding, grab a hold of me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, any one of those things there. That'll get a hold of me. And you can also try our email address. My own email address is my full name, Douglas Karwandy at yahoo.ca. And then you can also get a hold of us through our an EDA. Our EDA is our Electoral District Association. Used to call them riding associations. The Election Canada decided they were going to get all fancy and call it something else, but that's basically our old riding association. Their address is BRC Maverick EDA at gmail.com. That'll get you through to our main EDA board, and they can take your information and they'll get you that way. Otherwise, just go hold of me. It says, if, I'm not a big team. I mean, I've got a board of executives, a director at large, and a small group of volunteers in oh, it's getting bigger though. I mean, we got folks in Wainwright, we got folks in Consort, Castor, Donalda, Camrose, Bashaw, Balf, and a couple other ones. So this is we've got a good base starting. Always use more people. It's not easy getting out trying to pound on a lot of doors in a day. So we can use all the help and all the money that you can give us.
Well, for those who are looking to either donate or get involved in Doug's campaign, the links to his Facebook page, his Twitter, and to the Maverick Party website. And if I'm not mistaken, I put in the link to the EDA's email address will be in the show notes. So I highly recommend you get out and get involved. This election is going to be an important one for Western Canada, but also here all across Canada. But before we go, I do have two last questions for you, Doug.
Go for it.
I love this one because I love to hear why people are doing what they're doing. Doug, why should you be the next MP for the riding of Battle River Crowfoot?
The biggest asset that I can possibly say that is my ace in the hole is I'm not a politician. You know, everybody that I've talked to so far is sick and tired of our true blue quote unquote politicians that we've got. I am a regular guy. I've got a wife, kids, and bills to pay every day. It's every day is just a regular day. That's my ace in the hole. I like to think of politics as being a microcosm of how the population works. And I don't think there's a whole lot. I mean, my day-to-day operations, I don't run into a lot of lawyers. I don't run into a lot of folks that have degrees out there, yin yang, or been through political science. Just, those are not the folks that I hang out with on a general basis. So, like I said, I don't consider myself a politician. I'm a regular guy. That's, I think, my advantage is that I think people are tired of politics and they're tired of politicians. They want somebody that's more like the way they think and that have been through the experiences that they've been through. And I'm living that right now. I am Joe Average as far as that goes.
My last question for you, Doug, is what would be priority number one for you if elected day one after the next general election is finally called and you are the MP elect for Battle River Crowfoot? What is priority number one for you and your constituents?
Well, really, the priority number one would be getting ourselves an actual constituency office set up so that we've got a front door in the community as opposed to a virtual one that people are getting real sick and tired of in a hurry. Says I don't get me wrong. I love podcasts. I love virtual. I love Zoom. It's got us through the last year and a half, but this is we need people face to face daily now, not just not virtually. There's so much more that we can accomplish face to face and with a handshake than you could accomplish over a Zoom meeting and wait for somebody to pull a knife out of your back. So, day one is to get ourselves a constituency office so that we can get better communication with the constituents. Being a small party, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be wanting to knock on the doors and get their voices heard. And I think that's the best way to do it is to have an actual office and a place on the ground that people can get to.
Now, Battle River Crowfoot is a massive riding, one of the largest in Alberta. Do you envision
One of
yourself having more than just one office? Because I can imagine the people in the southwest quadrant or the southeast quadrant of your riding would not want to drive to the northeast or northwest quadrant of your riding
no,
to talk to
that's a
you.
long hike. That's a long hike. And the other aspect of that is because it is a large riding. It is hard for myself at that point to get out and go to the people. You go to Stettler and you go to the Board of Trade and you go to the town halls and I think you know what? I think a town hall would probably be one of the first things that a person should do once you've got yourself elected. I think the first thing out there would be to have a town hall. This is that way, not just a constituency, but a town hall. That way, people can get out and actually see and get their voices heard. Now, hopefully, all these people are already members because they're the folks that are going to be doing the party policy creation at our August 7th convention. So uh, it's all about the people. It's all about what they want and how they want to do it. I got my own ways as to how I think that we can expand and make it better, but I'm always looking for better ideas.
Um, Douglas, I want to thank you so much for doing this. I'm just cautious of time yet again. For my listeners, to my viewers, to the people who have tuned into this great interview, I want to thank them for tuning in. But I also want to thank you, Doug, for actually joining and actually talking and opening yourself
Thank
up
you.
to some questions because I think there's misconceptions about the Maverick Party, and I'm hoping that we cleared some up today because at the
Okay.
end of the day, I hope people make informed decisions, and sometimes the media is not the best for informed decisions. So if we can
No,
do a
it
little
hasn't
bit of
proved to be that way anyway.
guidance, go ahead.
No, I says it hasn't proved the media hasn't proved to be very definitive in their coverage. So they have a bias that I understand where it comes from. Fortunately, there are lots of other avenues for getting our message out there, and our like I said, our biggest our biggest contributor to our party right now is the Conservatives themselves. As they implode in Western Canada, we are seeing more and more members. So the more people getting the message every day.
Perfect. With that, Douglas, thank you so much for doing this. Yet again, for my listeners and to the viewers, the links to Doug's Facebook website, Twitter, and email address are in the show notes. I highly recommend you check them out. Douglas, once again, thank you so much for doing this. Greatly appreciated.